All right, everyone, welcome back to the fastest 20 minutes in sports presented by Betting by the Numbers. We're going to do a quick recap of sports all around the world. This one will focus on kind of the big sports as we get back into this series. We'll start diving back into the niche sports of maybe Formula One and rugby as those seasons begin and progress. But today we're going to focus on the big topics. Last night had two picks on a pick and a prop. Miami just looked terrible, honestly. They tried to do way too much. I thought that they would try to simplify the offense, try to run it through Tyreek Hill. Made a lot of sense. They've done it before. This time, they really tried to continue to do a lot of pre-snap motion, confuse the heck out of Tyler Huntley, and just made the game really way too hard. At the end, they started making small plays, getting the ball to Tyreek Hill. He just misses his receiving yards line. So just unfortunate. We go to 8-7 the year on NFL and college football plays that have been posted on Twitter. So we're hoping to turn that around. We had one great 5-2 day on a Saturday for college football, and we're going to be hoping to do the same. We have a little more time this weekend. Should be able to look into the picks. So without further ado, let's head into the NFL. All right, for the NFL, we're going to look at a couple teams that have really impressed me coming out of the gate, check in on some teams that were already supposed to be competing for the Super Bowl, and then finally we'll look at some betting trends to find some analysis of some games going forward. We're first going to start with teams that have impressed me. The first one being Tampa Bay. They come out, look great weeks 1 and 2. They look bad week 3, and then come week 4 and beat the Eagles, bounce back in very defining fashion. I think this offense is looking very well designed for Baker and the weapons they have, getting the ball to Godwin, getting the ball to Evans, not oversimplifying it, running the ball. And they've been able to score kind of any way they've wanted to. So Tampa Bay is one team that's been super impressive to me. Another is the Commanders. Even if their record isn't 4-0, Jaden Daniels has looked great. We've heard a lot about Cliff Kingsbury and his feel on the offense and how he really wanted Jaden Daniels as his guy, kind of in the same way that we heard other offensive coordinators, other GMs who have talked about quarterbacks that have worked in the past saying, this is our guy. Even if he's may not the best on the board, that was the person they wanted the most, and it seemed to have worked out great so far for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels seems confident. He seems unwavered. He seems like a playmaker, and I think that the Commanders are going to be able to do a lot of damage, even if it's not this year going forward. Two teams we're going to check in on just on injury report, really, are going to be the Chiefs and the 49ers. The Chiefs are riddled with injuries. The wide receiver room is very depleted at this point after Rashee Rice has gone likely down for the season. Hollywood Brown already out for the season. There are talks about conversations about trades in the possible future for the Chiefs in order to, bolster that room, make it so they really have a legit chance of going for 3 in a row. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm not sure how many teams are going to love sending a top target to the Chiefs. So it's going to cost money. It's going to cost trade picks. So it's kind of a question of whether or not you sell out completely for this season to try to go back to back to back for the first time in history, or if you just keep the path, rely on the weapons you have in Xavier Worthy, try to get Juju Smith-Schuster more involved if he can. And just rely on that offense to do enough to, score 21, because it seems like this defense isn't going to have more than that. In terms of the 49ers, another team with injuries, McCaffrey, not really sure where we're at with him. It sounds like there's a possibility of out for the season. He's had apparently Achilles tendonitis in both legs, something along those lines. So not a great situation. Jordan Mason's been filling in fine, but they're just a different offense without McCaffrey. So it'll be interesting to see how those teams can kind of respond. They've, in their record shown that they've been able to continue to win games. It's just a question of if that's sustainable into the playoffs. So a lot of time before then, we will see what will happen. But a couple trends to look at from the betting side of things. The best side so far has been the away underdogs, hitting about 58.2% against the spread. It's a little bit above that line that we'd be looking at for a possible effective trend. So away dogs, just dogs in general, hit about 55%. Another is the unders, which are hitting about 53%. So a little lower scoring games so far this season. It was a little bit better this weekend. And then additionally, underdogs have been the teams that have been able to cover. The home field advantage just doesn't seem to matter as much in college than in the NFL. It's been like that for years, but really it seems like those trends are going to continue. One other team in the NFL, just to touch on, Vikings. Sam Darnold has looked awesome. I just want to give him his flowers. He has looked great. He's taken advantage of the weapons, kind of like what I thought Miami would do with Tyreek Hill in get the ball to Justin Jefferson, continue to give the ball to Aaron Jones, and letting them do their work, and just don't turn the ball over. He's been great at that. He's made some awesome throws. So shout out to Sam Darnold. I hope the Vikings can keep it up as the only other defeated, because they'd also make a great person to play in a Super Bowl and be able to beat them. So, but yeah, the Vikings look great. And from the NFL to golf, we had a season finale in the FedEx Cup a couple weeks ago, wrapped up the season there. Still don't love how the FedEx Cup championship works with just adding and subtracting strokes from the players based on their finishings going into the last event. But that's a conversation for another time. Overall, pretty good season. Definitely missed the Live golfers at time. Live had a good season, but their TV ratings are really down because not a lot of people watch the CW. So interesting to see how those developments will go. But we turned from Live and PGA to the President's Cup, a competition between the United States and everyone except Europe. So it's an international team except for a team that would be competing in the Ryder Cup. So it gets a different group of golfers out there playing in match play. There's a couple more matches than usual, but the scoring's relatively the same. And the United States came out and dominated in day one, held on through days 2, 3, and 4 to get their 10th win in a row in this bi-yearly competition against the international crowds. Overall, it was a good tournament. There were some big moments, some moments of the international team, some quieter guys like the Tom Kims of the world getting involved, starting to cheer, and Mi Woo Kim is additional. Just doing a lot of fun antics during the games to keep everybody entertained. But that's what match play is good for. I hope to see more of it during the season if possible. That's why it works in Live, because they can have that match play aspect. But overall, President's Cup 18.5 to 11.5. USA wins it. Definitely going to hope to keep the momentum going, especially with Mr. Keegan Bradley putting in the game winner, or rather the President's Cup winner, and he will be our captain heading into the next Ryder Cup. So hope to just keep this momentum going. Additionally, Live players had a big announcement. It was announced that they will be able to compete on the Ryder Cup teams in the upcoming competitions. Additionally, Live may be closer to a merger with the PGA. They just signed to the same media agency, so seems like they're trying to figure out a way to get the two parties to be able to compete at least happily against each other, or at least have them competing in a way where players can move between the tours or play against the tours during the season, other than the majors. So interesting time in golf, not a whole lot of answers, but President's Cup went well, and we will be turning to soccer. Towards soccer, we're going to run through the EPL, La Liga, Bundesliga, Champions League really quickly. These seasons are starting to get into match days 6 and 7. We're starting to get into match day 2 of the Champions League. So we're starting to get an idea of who these teams are. In the EPL, really, the big news is going to be Man City's struggles. After being so dominant for so many years, they just announced that they're going to have Rodri out for the season. He is a mainstay in both their offense and their defense. So losing them is going to impact Man City pretty substantially. Obviously, they have the substitutes to be able to make up for that loss, at least in some way. But overall, the loss of Rodri is a big deal. That really leaves then who is going to compete. And I think that's horse race between Chelsea, Arsenal, and Liverpool. Chelsea might have looked the best so far, at least the most dominant in the games that they've won. Cole Palmer's looked great, the Man City Academy graduate, who unfortunately Man City let get away. So he's looked great for Chelsea. Arsenal and Liverpool have looked a lot like themselves. It's interesting with Liverpool having the new coach. They're doing it a little differently, but they're still getting the same results. I think all those teams are going to be vying for a championship at the end of the year. I think the schedule is going to catch up to all of them, playing so much in the Champions League, playing so much in the international realm. I think that it's going to be a 6-point competition coming down to the last couple of weeks, just because the team's going to be exhausted and no one's going to be able to run away with it. Turning towards La Liga, kind of back to a normal season. We're starting with Barcelona, Real Madrid, Villarreal, and Atletico Madrid. Barcelona has an undefeated so far season in La Liga. Just kind of back to the La Liga we know of really the top 4 teams dominating, and then the rest just kind of meddling about to see who can stay up and who can overachieve, but not a lot of title aspirations outside of those top 4. Turning to the Bundesliga, Eintracht Frankfurt, probably the surprise so far of the season, sitting in second place. Other than that, Bayern looks back to winning ways, especially in the Champions League, had a dominating win. They've been looking good. They're top of the league in the Bundesliga right now. Additionally, although Bayer Leverkusen lost their undefeated streak, they still look good. They're still in, I believe, third place. They've had just one loss in the season, so look for them to continue to get results, whether they're wins or ties. Get a lot of results for Leverkusen and keep them contending in the Bundesliga. Finally, in the Champions League, a little bit different this season. There are 36 teams. Each team's going to play 8 match games, and then we're going to go into a bracket. So it's not entirely different, just no longer these small groups. The games are more spread out amongst the teams. It's supposed to create better matchups and make it more of a round-robin style competition. So I think it should be good. It's going to add to some more games, and it's going to add to maybe some more high-profile games in the group stage and not just leaving those for the elimination stage. Looking at match day 1, big losses so far were Barcelona and Milan. And then we have some big games coming up with match day 2 today. On October 1st, we got Dortmund and Celtic, Arsenal, PSG. Then tomorrow, Leipzig and Juventus, and then Aston Villa and Bayern Munich. Very interesting matchup on that last one. Aston Villa had a great season last year, earned their spot in the Champions League. Very interested to see how they can compete against the big dogs in Bayern Munich. Putting up just any sort of showing would be pretty impressive. So other than that, we don't know a whole lot about these teams yet. We'll see how these big teams kind of beat up on the smaller teams first, and then in these big matchups as we get closer to the bracket and figuring out who's going to be playing where. I'm sure there will be a lot of interesting scenarios to work through. So Champions League might have a bigger portion of the show coming up, just so we can work out who's looking like they're in a good path and who has the best chance to win. So super interesting in the soccer world. Turning from soccer, we're going to get into the last segment of this week, the college football realm, and then we're going to finally get one last pick for the week. College football has been great so far this year. Last weekend, we had an unbelievable comeback in the Georgia-Alabama game. Georgia looks like they pull off the almost 30-point comeback. Alabama makes an amazing play, scores a touchdown, wins the game. Interception in the end zone to end the game. Just an awesome, awesome college football game. That comes on the heels of Ole Miss losing at Kentucky. Kind of a turbulent Saturday for those at the top. Alabama looked unbelievable. Did not look like the loss of Nick Saban had hurt them too much, even though they had some transfers out. Kalen DeBoer looks like he had them in a very, very different team. They didn't look quite like the Saban teams in terms of kind of polished perfection, but rather they just looked like they went out there to kick some ass, and they did that. And so very, very impressed with Alabama. Texas, Ohio State feel like they could be number 1, too. Archie Manning down in Texas has looked good in his debut and then his first full game. Additionally, Ohio State just a sawmill right now. They're a little slow at the beginning of games, but that's just kind of normal for them. They'll play Iowa this weekend. We'll get a good idea of how they compete against at least somewhat better competition. But right now, out of the top 10, you have 5 teams of the SEC, 4 teams out of the Big Ten, Bama, Texas at 1 and 2. You got Ohio State at 3. This is all in the AP. 4 is Tennessee, Oregon at 6, Penn State 7. Finishing out, we got Georgia at 6, and we have Missouri at 9, Michigan at 10. So SEC, Big Ten, they're doing their thing. That's kind of what we expected earlier in the season. Not a lot of cross big matchups that would knock teams out. So, I think we're going to start getting into the big games starting off this weekend. We start off on the 11 a.m. slate in the Central Time. Number 9 Mizzou against number 25 or 23 Texas A&M. At Texas A&M, Missouri's first, I would say second real test. Boston College was probably their first real test. They squeak out a game against Vandy. Can they go on the road to Aggieland and still pull off a win? Really show that Luther Burden can be the best wide receiver in the country? I hope so. I'm not going to give you a solid yes or no because I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if they're entirely sure. They're the better team on paper. Missouri should go in and win this game. But you're playing in front of 105,000 people. It's a little bit different. A lot of these guys are experienced, so hopefully the environment won't shake them too much. But very interested to see how Missouri does in that game. Additionally, we have Alabama coming off a massive win against Georgia, heading to Vandy. Watch for that spot right there. Vandy looked good against Mizzou, looked like they had enough defense to hold them to some points, make Alabama score. I'm not saying Alabama's going to lose. Just don't be surprised if it's a little closer than it's supposed to be. And then finally, we have 2 games at the Big Ten. Number 11 USC at Minnesota, number 10 Michigan at Washington. I mark a lot of those games. The odds are getting a little closer, but also just interesting seeing these former Pac-12 teams play in the Big Ten for the first time creates some interesting matchups. So some final interesting little notes is the trends that I've noticed from the betting trends so far. Home favorites are only hitting about 47.7% of the time, meaning that just the home field advantage doesn't have the impact that it used to. We saw this in the NFL with its betting trends as well. A slight lean to the unders in the same way the NFL is, but it's a little bit closer. I mean, we're talking about 10 games or so in difference between the home and the away unders. So really unders as a whole, home favorite or away dogs are kind of barking for both the NFL and the NCAA, but leaves us in a great spot. So that leads me into finally the pick of the episode. We're going to be taking on a Friday game the UNLV Rebels against Syracuse. The line's moved from UNLV -4 to -6. The money's still coming in on UNLV. Our rating system have this between -9 to -13. I think it's a mismatch. It's a Friday game. I think the better team's going to come out and win. I think that UNLV does that and covers this -6 right now. So if you're going to get that line, I would try to get it today. I think there's a chance it gets up over that 7. So getting the -6, good value, hopefully, on closing line. And that's going to wrap up our fastest 20 minutes in sports. We've covered NFL, golf, soccer, NCAA football, and finally our pick of the day. We're going to keep doing this weekly, maybe bi-weekly, but we'll just have to see all this produced ourselves, so it just takes some time. Other than that, we'll have our pick and a prop. That'll be coming out on Saturday and Sunday this week. So lots of fun things to look forward to. If you can like, subscribe, do anything you can to support the channel, it's super appreciative. I'll continue having picks posted over on Twitter. I'll be better about that, about when I'm taking picks at home. If it's something I feel confident in, posting it on Twitter. Because I've been doing a lot of live betting, and it seemed to really be paying off, kind of seeing what these teams look like and then taking advantage of it. So thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Thank you.